as we close this out, maybe I'm going to ask the most challenging question of the podcast. So you spent a lot of time today basically talking about Bitcoin being sort of a malinvestment, just like not a good idea, pyramid scheme, all of these things. I want you to do the opposite as we close. And this is why I said it was challenging, because I know you don't think this, but can you Steelman the case for Bitcoin and crypto for listeners today? What is the most compelling piece of the story that you've heard? And if you were asked to Steelman it, give the best possible case, what would you say?
Well, the only compelling argument to it is that it is possible that there's another wave of buying. You have the ETFs that are out there. They're trying to pressure Trump to the extent that he becomes president. And I hope he does, because he's better than the alternative. Will Trump, will they be able to succeed in getting the U.S. government to buy Bitcoin? I hope they don't buy Bitcoin. It's the last thing we need to do is print more money to buy Bitcoin. But to the extent that some of these things happen, and I know there's going to be very high inflation. I know we're going to have a dollar crisis. People are going to be looking for alternatives to the dollar, to the euro, to the yen. And it's possible that people might take refuge in Bitcoin. And given the fact that there's 21 million of them, or 2.1 quadrillion Satoshis, but we don't need to get into that, but whatever, 21 million Bitcoin. If enough people who own Bitcoin don't sell, and you get enough money coming in, the price could move up. As I said, it could move up to 100,000, 200,000, 300,000. It could happen. And you could sell it at those prices. Now, most people won't, right? If Bitcoin does go to a couple 100,000, most of you hodlers will, oh, wow, yeah, diamond hands. I'm not selling, right? I'm taking it to the grave. And so most of you will just ride it up and ride it down. But there may be the opportunity. But again, I think there's as much, if not more, upside in other speculative assets that have real fundamental value that I think have a much lower chance of crashing than Bitcoin. So even though I concede that it's possible that the circumstances that are going to unfold with inflation and the dollar and all this stuff could result in another wave into Bitcoin, I just don't think it's worth betting on it. And it's also, you got to ask yourself, why hasn't it already happened? Like, what's stopping it? Why isn't Bitcoin? When the Bitcoin ETFs were launched in January, you go back and you look at what everybody was saying about where Bitcoin would be by now, way higher. Bitcoin is still up this year, but only for the first 2 months. All the gains that Bitcoin has had in 2024 were in January and February. Since the end of February, it's gone down, maybe about 10%, maybe close to that. Well, gold's gone up 22%, 23%. So you got to ask yourself, why is this happening? Does this mean something, right? Despite all this buying. And what I'm concerned about too is what happens when the ETF buyers become sellers, because they haven't been. They've been buying, they've been riding it out, they've been buying the dips, but they've only been doing this for 8 months, right? They're not, true believers. They waited until 2024 to buy their first Bitcoin, a lot of them, and they didn't even buy it the right way. They bought it through an ETF. So they're purely speculating on the price, right? When you buy a Bitcoin ETF, all you're doing is buying it because you think the price is going to go up. There's no other reason. It's not like you can do anything else with it because it's inside an ETF in your brokerage account. So you can't give it to somebody else, right? It's stuck. All you can do is sell it. You can't transfer it. You can't sneak it out of the country. It's not self-custody. They're not your keys. So it's just people that are buying as a gamble, just like they would buy a biotech stock or anything. And at some point, they're going to be disappointed. They were promised a big gain on their Bitcoin. And so far, most people in the Bitcoin ETFs are losing money. And at some point, they're going to lose enough money that they're going to call it quits, right? They're going to sell. And I just don't think that's possible. I just don't think there's enough real buying in the spot market to allow that to happen. There was plenty of sellers in the spot market that sold their Bitcoin to these ETF buyers. That's why the ETFs have all this Bitcoin, because people sold it, right, to them. But I don't think those same people are going to want to buy it back. And I think they're happy they got rid of it. The last thing they do is want that hot potato back. And so all of a sudden, there's going to be all this selling, and the market's going to implode. It's going to be the biggest Bitcoin crash we've ever seen. And, in prior Bitcoin crashes, what has saved the day was Tether, right? All of a sudden, a bunch of tethers come in, they create a bunch of tethers, and they buy Bitcoin, right? It kind of like stops the decline. Well, that won't work if the selling is coming from an ETF, because the ETFs can't take Tether. They need dollars, because they have to put the dollars in their customers' brokerage accounts. They can't say, well, we didn't get any dollars, we're going to give you some Tether. They have to give them the actual cash in their accounts that day, right? It's market, right? If I own a Bitcoin ETF and I hit sell, the ETF has to sell those Bitcoin that day. They have to put cash in my account that day. And so if there's no bids, well, they just got to hit whatever bids are there. They can't say, well, we didn't sell because there really wasn't anybody there. Well, the price has to keep coming down until there is somebody there, right? Because they just hit sell. Because it's not like when Grayscale was a closed-end trust, it didn't matter, right? If people dumped Grayscale, it went down. It didn't affect Bitcoin. That's why Grayscale as a closed-end trust got to a 50% discount, because people wanted out, and so it traded at a discount. But none of those Bitcoin ever got sold. They were just trapped in Grayscale. But now that everybody owns the ETFs, every time they sell, those Bitcoin now go back to the actual market, and they have to find an actual buyer. Well, when all the people who own the ETFs are selling, who's going to be buying? So it's just going to be just like a trap door, and it's just going to be a crash. And then, people have borrowed money to buy Bitcoin, margin calls. I mean, it's just, it's going to be a bloodbath, right? And that's coming. And, and I'm sure, wherever Bitcoin bottoms out, it'll probably rise. It's not, going to just go straight down. I mean, there'll be rallies. I mean, dead cats bounce, right? So Bitcoin can drop to 10,000 or 5,000 on ETF liquidation, and it can bounce to 15 or 20,000, after everybody gets flushed out. But then it'll go down again. So it's just not for me. I don't want to play in that casino. There's other risk reward situations that are a lot better. Do I wish I had taken a position when I first heard about it? Of course, and people, try to make it out like, you see, Peter regrets not buying Bitcoin. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not an idiot. I mean, everybody who bought Bitcoin regrets not buying more, right? I mean, everybody's like, I should have bought more of it when I first heard about it, right? Everybody, because with the benefit of hindsight, yeah, there are a lot of things. I should have loaded up on NVIDIA 10 years ago, whatever, I remember when I didn't like it because I thought, well, it's all this, they're making all this stuff for the crypto miners, right? That's a fad. But there are a lot of stocks that I could have bought that I didn't buy. And with the benefit of hindsight, I wish I bought them, But there are a lot of stocks that I did buy that did really well. And I think there are some that I own that will do really well. And of course, I don't have benefit of hindsight with these. I'm trying to figure it out with foresight. But, I people who buying into these things now, you're not, people think I'm getting in on the ground floor buying Bitcoin. You're not getting in on the ground floor. I mean, you're not even close to the ground floor, right? When so many people know about it and talk about it and hype it up. I mean, there was just this Bitcoin convention. In fact, I ran into the guy at a party here a couple weeks ago in Puerto Rico who threw that convention, Bitcoin Magazine guy, CEO. And, he had over 20,000 people at his convention. And I was like, I go to these gold conventions every year. The one that I go to, the oldest, the biggest retail gold convention in the U.S. Is in New Orleans every year. And, they get like 500 people. That's like the big granddaddy of the gold conferences. 500 people. Guy's got 20,000 people at his conference, and he's got presidential candidates talking there. I mean, all these they're not coming to the gold conferences. So when you see something like that, that's like, during the housing bubble, if you haven't seen my mortgage banker speech from 2006, I went to this conference of mortgage bankers in 05 and 06, at the peak of the housing bubble. And they had a big extravagant conference with, all kinds of frills. They had tigers there and, all kinds of crazy things. And I remember pointing out, look, this is obviously the top of this mortgage bubble, housing bubble, that you guys can afford this elaborate conference. I mean, this doesn't happen at market bottoms. This happens at market tops, where you have this kind of excitement and money just thrown around. And, that's what you had at this Nashville Bitcoin conference. So it's, when you're on the top, you got no place to go but down. So I think that's where it's headed.
Well, Peter, I'm not sure how many people you convinced in the Bankless Nation, but you certainly made the case. We appreciate it.
Hopefully we convince some. At least, you know what? At least hedge your bets.
Yeah, there you go.
Hey, acknowledge that I could be right. Right? I mean, maybe I'm not crazy old man. I could be right. Take something off the top. Sell some Bitcoin. Don't let it all ride. Right? Don't leave it all on black and keep spinning the wheel. Take some of the chips off the table, put them in your pocket, right? Play with the house's money, right? Whatever. And then take that money, buy real investments, buy gold, buy silver, buy stocks, pay dividends, maybe buy yourself some income producing real estate, do something. And even if I'm wrong and Bitcoin goes to 1 million or whatever Michael Saylor says, 30 million, I don't know, what a crazy number he pulled out of his butt. But you'll still be rich. Even if you have half as many Bitcoin, you'll still have twice as many, actually not twice as many, infinitely more than I do, right? So you'll still have plenty of Bitcoin if you sell half your Bitcoin now or whatever you're going to do. But if I'm right and you haven't sold anything, you're broke, right? So you don't want to be broke. You don't want to have to start from zero because you've lost everything and missed out on some of these opportunities. I mean, I could be right. Some of the, what if gold stocks do go up 10 times, 20 times, 50 times, and Bitcoin collapses? Not only have you lost all this money in Bitcoin, but you've missed out on the opportunity to make that money. So, put a little money there too. Right? Cover your bets, right? I'm so confident that Bitcoin's not going to go anywhere that I don't even bother to gamble on it. But if you own it, you have to perceive that there's a good chance that you're right, even though that you're wrong. Even you might be right, but there's a decent chance that you're wrong. So invest based on that chance that you're wrong. And in fact, at Schiff Gold, I know we make it easy because we work with this company called BitPay, and we're probably one of the first companies to start working with BitPay. But you can go on Schiff Gold, and using BitPay, you can actually buy your gold directly with your Bitcoin in the same transaction. So you can get rid of fool's gold and buy the real thing.
Wow. Well, Peter Schiff trying to vampire attack us right now on Bankless.
No, I'm trying to help you guys out.
Oh, thank you for the help.
I'm doing my good deed.
You certainly made the case. I think we're going to have to check back in 1,000 years and see what the monetary
it's not going to take that long.
is.
check back next year. Check back next year.
We'll definitely check back with you.
If you enjoyed all of that, then you'll absolutely love the Bankless newsletter. Join over 300,000 fellow readers, all for free. Click below to sign up.